Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Strategy and Resources Scrutiny Board, which we'll be discussing Leeds 2023. It will be our first formal item, which I'm looking forward to. Welcome, my name is Andrew Scopes. I'm the chair and a councillor for the Beeston Holbeck ward. We're going to start with a round of introductions, if that's okay. Debbie will be here taking minutes, but she's helpfully handing some information around to members. So we'll come back to us. I'll start with Councillor Ritchie.
Morning, everyone. Councillor Kevin Ritchie, Bramley and Stanley Ward.
Morning, Councillor France Mear from Moortown and Meanwood Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Burke from Middleton Park Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Caroline Gruen, Bramley and Stanley Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Gower Almas from the Beeston Holbeck Ward.
Abigail Scott Paul. Oh gosh. From Leeds 2023, Director of External Relations and Strategic Partnerships.
Good morning, Emma Beverley, Director of Programmes at Leeds 2023.
Morning, Cully Thiare, Creative Director and CEO of Leeds 2023.
Good morning, Councillor Jonathan Pryor. I'm Deputy Leader and Executive Member for Economy, Culture and Education.
Good morning, I'm Eve Roothouse. I'm Chief Officer for Culture and Economy.
Morning, I'm Karen Murgatroyd. I'm the Executive Manager for the Leeds 2023 Partnership.
Good morning, Billy Flynn, Councillor for Radden Wharfdale.
Good morning, Councillor Diane Chapman, Councillor for Rothwell Ward.
Morning, everyone. Rob Clayton, Principal Scrutiny Advisor.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Debbie Oldham and I'm the clerk to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome again. Okay, Debbie, can you just take us through the first formal items 1 to 5, please?
Thank you, Chair. Under agenda item number 1, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Under agenda item 2, there are no exempt items. Agenda item 3, a late item has been tabled with the Chair's approval, and this is the minutes of a calling which was held on Friday the 7th of October. Under agenda item 4, could I ask members to declare any interests? Councillor Almas?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know whether it counts as interest or not, but I'm just volunteering for the Leeds 2023. So just to let you know, thank you.
Thank you. And under agenda item 5, there have been no apologies received. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, let's start with the minutes from the call-in, which have been circulated. Apologies that these haven't got to members sooner. Are members happy to approve them, or do you want more time? I take silence as happy, so we'll move forward on to the minutes of the previous meeting. So I'll pass over to Rob for those, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few items to update members on following the 26th September meeting. Minute 34, which was the annual corporate risk item. The 2 action points have taken place. So a letter has been written to Councillor Harland related to funding linked to the cost of living crisis. And secondly, a summary of the SEAC report has been sent to members following requests from the board. Minute 35 has also been actioned, which relates to call volumes of the contact centre. So board members should have all of that information. Yes, based on the last minutes. Just in addition to that, Councillor Scopes and I attended the Environment, Housing and Communities working group of that board. And that related to the waste inquiry that has been to this board on a number of occasions. Just to update, it was a good session. Positive developments have been taking place. I think the Chair and I both thought that. But the work is still under development. So just to flag up to members that the planned item in January on our work programme for the waste inquiry will likely be moved to a later date in 2023. So just to update members on that and on the action points. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments on any other matters arising that people want to raise? No. Okay, thank you very much. So without any further ado, we'll move on to Leeds 2023 and over to Eve Reedhouse. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So what we plan to do is I'll just make a few open introductory comments relating to the report itself, and then Cully and the team will do a short presentation, and then I propose, Chair, that we take questions after both of those, if that's all right. Okay, so since we last attended Scrutiny together with Leeds 2023 in March, a huge amount of work's been done across a whole range of areas, and the report updates on progress across each of those. But key points to highlight from the report are, first of all, you obviously noticed that Karen Murgatroyd is here with us today. Karen actually was appointed and moved into her post on the 1st of April since we last met as Scrutiny, and her appointment has assisted greatly in supporting the day-to-day relationship between the Council and Leeds 2023. Secondly, significant progress has been made by Leeds 2023 in shaping the programme of the Year of Culture since the last meeting, and that was evidenced in the 100 Days to Go launch, and we'll hear more about that shortly. Thirdly, a huge amount of engagement has gone on, particularly with elected members since the last meeting. This was something I know Councillor Frith was particularly raised at the last meeting. So a presentation has happened at every community committee between June and July in that round. Leeds 2023 have held citywide roadshows over the summer, which covered every ward. Elected members have received a briefing pack in mid-September, so each elected member received an individual briefing pack. Members were also invited to the 100 Days to Go event, and 18 councillors attended that, which is great. Ward councillors have been briefed on activity that will be happening in their wards, and then most recently there was an event last Tuesday at which 15 councillors attended, and there was a briefing and an opportunity to meet neighbourhood hosts, which I understand was a really successful event. Then to comment on a couple of other areas, so we have done some internal review around the legacy position. I say internal in the sense of a report that's been developed for internal use, but has actually involved engagement with stakeholders right across the city. That's kind of really given us that kind of sense of remembering to have perspective on legacy, both looking back to the point from when we decided to bid for European Capital Culture and look forwards right beyond 2023 to the legacy that we want to achieve in 5 and 10 years after the Year of Culture. And one of the clear things that came out through that is that we already have legacy. So we have a heightened sense of confidence and ambition, and I think that if we hadn't bid for European Capital Culture, we wouldn't have had the confidence to bid for Eurovision recently and put a very high quality proposal in. It's just a shame that the BBC didn't pick us. Also to sort of note that to remind kind of members that the trust is expected to wind up in 2024. So it is very clear that the council must take a leading role. And following the review, we're planning a number of kind of steps to make sure that all of that is properly in place, including ensuring that legacy planning is accounted for in the Reset Grant Agreement, which is referred to in the report. And then the final thing I just wanted to underline before I pass across to Cully is just to note the great progress that Leeds 2023 have made on fundraising. So at the time of writing the report, and I'm sure Cully will update if the position is improved, there was over £5,196,373, let's get the figure right, of additional funding that Leeds 2023 had managed to leverage. And one of the important things for legacy is actually for us to consider how we can continue some of the relationships that Leeds 2023 have been building over the past few months with the private sector and with trusts and foundations to ensure that that contribution can continue into the culture sector in the city. So I'll leave it there, Chair, and pass across to Cully.
Thank you very much, Eve. Robert, could I have the next slide, please? So I won't go over much of the grounds that Eve's already mentioned. As she said, there's been a lot of progress made, but just a quick reminder of the structure of our year. We're looking to have a deliver the year across 3 seasons, a kind of 3-part epic narrative, if you like, and that's broken down into awakening, playing and dreaming. And you'll see through the dates, awakening kicks off in January and runs through till April. Playing is really about public spaces and external spaces, but also sense of allowing everybody that sort of playful experiences, and dreaming, thinking about the future from September through to December and handing the baton back to the city and its future generations. We showcased a few of the projects that we're about to mention at our 100 days to go. The awakening kicks off, next slide please Rob, with a show at Headingley Stadium, and it's both the opening celebration of all of the past and present of showcasing the best of Leeds through word, song and dance, but it's also really encouraging everyone to get creative. So the tickets are free and we're encouraging everyone to submit a piece of art, however they might define it, to get free tickets to the event, trying to democratize and access as many people as possible. We've got extraordinary talent attending, and the National Poet Laureate Simon Armitage is creating and performing a new poem, and opera north are involved, and mass dance sequences are being developed, and so there's lots of ways in which we hope that it'll celebrate this city. Next slide please. Part of the way we're doing that is encouraging people to participate in through a series of activities across the city to promote the ballot. So we've been doing a number of creative stations popping up in locations right until the 25th of November. We're asking all our partners to kind of also help us get everyone excited, and there's yellow post boxes available through some of our partner organisations at the city, so that they can deliver their artwork by hand or upload it digitally. We've also recently been able to offer group uploads as well. So some of the key projects, next slide please. You'll have heard of us talk about this before, My Leeds programme, and we've mentioned the recruitment of 33 hosts to really look at how we help neighbourhoods co-create a celebratory event as one of our signature programmes, and that's building nicely, and the training programme for the 33 hosts has happened, and as Eva said, we've had some sessions already with the group and done introductions. Next slide please. Similarly, you may have heard us talk about Smeaton 300. 2024 is 300th anniversary of John Smeaton, a major artist, engineer and creative from the city, and many of the projects throughout the year will really celebrate his history, energy and heritage, and include touring a mobile observatory to Leeds communities, schools and to surprising places in the city. Next slide please. Hibiscus Rising is an internationally renowned British and Nigerian artist, Yinka Shonibare. This will be a major artwork in the city in Air Park. The maquette, which is a model of what the final piece will look like, is currently being exhibited at the Tetley with an exhibition that showcases the work and the development of the projects that DOMA, as the community organisation who's been leading on this, has done with communities. We'd really encourage you to go and see it if you haven't already. It will be a major significant artwork that's permanently displayed, and it'll be his first in the country. So it's in partnership with, as I said, David Olawale Memorial Association, and very close to the David Olawale footbridge and the blue plaque if you've been there. And finally, the other major signature event that we announced as part of our 100 days to go is All That Lives. This is a culmination of work by Ellie Harrison, who's a Leeds-based artist, and she's been making work around called the Grief Series around living and dying for the last 13 years, and in partnership with Mexican arts collective Zion Studios, we'll be bringing all of that work together in a 9-day celebration of life and death in November, on the Day of the Dead, reimagined with the people of Yorkshire. I'm going to now hand over to Emma, who'll talk a little bit about the partnership programme. Thank you.
Thank you. So I've got some quick fire slides here, just in case you missed some of our announcements at 100 days to go. A quick overview, though, we're working in partnership with 50 local organisations, about 25 international organisations and 10 national partners too. And what we announced at 100 days to go is a bit of a flavour of what's to come. There'll be many more to speak about. So the first is called 1001 Stories, which is collecting 1001 stories from older people across Leeds. This will result in a takeover at Leeds Playhouse with the Performance Ensemble, who are one of the new NPO, National Portfolio Organisations, announced on Friday by Arts Council England. So we've been supporting them throughout their process of applying for that major funding opportunity. That will be in April next year. Next slide, please. With Compass Festival, we've been creating a new project, which is called the Leeds Source, and that's celebrating food culture, history, food experts, chefs and farmers, and it's kind of playfully exploring what would Leeds taste like. You can actually experience some of their workshops for that this November when Compass Festival is happening. They'll be at Leeds Market with the artist collective Popeye, creating the source through workshops and different activities with the stall holders and the residents there. Next slide, please. With Verity Watts, who's a local DJ, and the Rothwell Temperance Band will be celebrating heritage through sound during a series of live events throughout next year. Next slide, please. Young people across Leeds schools will take part in a major UK-wide project called The Great Escape. With Leeds Museums and Galleries, school children will create a special event as part of Earth Day, and that will be a takeover of a major project that we'll be doing in City Square. That will be in April as well next year. Next slide, please. BBC Contains Strong Language will come to the Howard Assembly Rooms in September next year. With the BBC, we'll be bringing some incredible national poets and spoken word artists to Leeds, alongside a special project with Poet Laureate Simon Armitage that's been supported by the British Council. This is also in support of the kind of runway of activities that we're looking at that celebrate poetry and spoken word in the city in the build-up to the National Poetry Centre. Next slide, please. With the European Union National Institutes for Culture, we'll be bringing In Short, which is their film festival, to Leeds, and this will be the first time that they've hosted this film festival outside of London, so we're particularly thrilled that they've chosen us, and we're also very happy that we're keeping our kind of European heritage core as part of the programme in terms of our start as a bid for European Capital of Culture. Next slide, please. And with Opera North and South African cellist Abel Selechwe will be bringing a sound walk throughout the centre of Leeds, and that'll be for a month every single day, and that's building on activities that Opera North started during lockdown when they were trying to think of exciting new ways of bringing music to people during that particular time. As I mentioned earlier with the Performance Ensemble, on Friday's Arts Council England announcements about national portfolio organisations, we were really happy to see that there were 3 new entries to the portfolio, all of whom are different partners that we're working with to develop and deliver projects next year, and they'll be actively involved in the delivery of the programme. Beyond the kind of arts and culture sector specifically, if you could go to the next slide, please. We've been developing as many relationships as we can with different community organisations to help us deliver some significant engagement activities in the city that again act as a runway for us into next year to build new partnerships and relationships with people. My World, My City, My Neighbourhood, which hopefully you've all heard about before, completed, and there are some statistics here about the number of artists and creatives we've worked with, the participants who took part, and the live audience members who interacted with it. Alongside My World, My City, My Neighbourhood, with the Heritage Fund, we delivered Hidden Stories, where artists and communities were working with 10 heritage organisations across the city. They've also recently completed and will be publishing the data for that very soon. We delivered community roadshows to all 33 wards and had about 800 people join those, including many ward members, so thank you if you did attend. presentations to the 10 community committees, and we've recruited 33 neighbourhood hosts now. We had 76 applications in total. We're very grateful for everyone who helps us promote that opportunity. Alongside the 33 neighbourhood hosts, we've now confirmed 33 what we're calling anchor organisations, who are community organisations in each ward that will work alongside those hosts. And as part of the opening show, we've had about just over 1,000 ballot entries now, and you can actually follow all of that data and that information through the dashboard that's linked in here, which I think Abigail's going to talk to you a bit about in a moment. If we go to the next slide, please. Alongside kind of ward-based community engagement, we've also been pushing our work with schools and young people. We delivered a summit back in July, which was where we designed a special event with young creatives. This event invited school children, young people aged 18 to 25, teachers and organisations to attend. And as a result of that, they created a manifesto that we're taking forward into our activity with young people next year. We've also recruited a group of what we're calling young creators for one of our special events next year, Children's Day. And they're developing that event right now at the moment with the artists Fevered Sleep, who are working on that. And we've been working with about 1,000 young people through schools at this moment through various activities that we've been pilot and testing in different schools across the city. I'm going to hand over to Abigail now.
Hi, so just wanted to touch on volunteering. So our aspiration is to recruit at least 1,000 new volunteers from across the city These figures are actually out of date already, because on our live dashboard at the link which we can send around afterwards, we actually have had 904 people sign up, so almost 1,000 people signed up already. We're not, kind of 2 months out, so that's brilliant. And 502 people have actually made applications, and you can see there the sort of that's a kind of heat map of where applications are coming from, and we're obviously reviewing that and working with our neighbourhood hosts in each ward to make sure that we're getting the engagement from right across the city. So that's a really kind of useful tool that we've got to see where volunteers are coming from. Next slide, please. Have the next slide, please. Oh, previous one. And I just wanted to reflect on our 100 Days to Go launch, which was held in our new office on Brewery Wharf on the 23rd of September. This was kind of our first major public outing where we announced all the projects you've just heard, and we had a brilliant two briefings hosted by Gabby Logan, and we attracted around over 250 people, stakeholders and community groups came along to that. We held creation stations on Brewery Wharf and invited Ingram Primary School down to get involved in making their entries for the ticket ballot. We had great media coverage on the day. Radio Leeds ran with it all day and across the weekend, getting some of their hosts to create their entries to the ballot, which included a sea shanty. So who knew in landlocked Leeds there would be a sea shanty? But really, really good engagement. And we had some national profile as well. Gabby was live on Steph's Pat Lunch from Leeds Dock that day as well. We have obviously got an online campaign that's going on at the moment, which complements all on the ground activity that's taking place in terms of trying to drive kind of ballot entries. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to finish with a kind of snapshot of all the supporters that we've got, and particularly from the private sector. So as Eve mentioned, we have got great momentum and support from businesses across the city and wider, and some national businesses there. We held an event with the Chamber of Commerce at the Tetley on Thursday night, and we got a whole new bunch of people interested in supporting Leeds 2023. Channel 4 and Burberry are names on there that we haven't yet fully announced, but are also on board. So we're really keen to make sure that kind of with some of these businesses who might not naturally fund cultural activity in the city, that we think about how do we create those lasting kind of relationships that can go on after Leeds 2023 is over. So a lot of really good work, and that will continue. The fundraising will continue into next year. As you know, some of the projects are still a year out, particularly the closing event. So we've still got another 12 months of fundraising to go, but really, really delighted with the support we're getting across the city from our business community. And I think that concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Thank you for commenting on. So I think on the things that were raised last time, thank you for commenting in terms of the engagement. I think the other thing you just touched on, Cully, but it'd just be helpful if you expand a bit more in terms of getting opportunities for everyone in the city to engage. And I think last time the comments were made about transport and getting into the city centre and that sort of thing. So it'd just helpful if you commented a bit more on that, because I think it's something we raised last time. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Scopes. Yeah, we're trying across all of our signature programmes to look at how we create opportunities for ease of access, and I guess the weave of the schools programme, the community engagement programme, and the projects themselves are designed to try and reach out as far as we can. The area that we're also talking about in terms of developing insight into who we're connecting with, as Abigail mentioned, there's a framework through Open Innovations that allows us to kind of keep up to date and look at where there might be less engagement and looking at how we bring that together. Abigail, sounds like you want to say something on that.
Yeah, we're in discussions with one of the major bus companies in the city. I can't say who, but we're really hopeful that we will get an arrangement with them that they could offer low cost, if not free, travel for people attending events. And we also met with we're meeting with other transport representatives. So that is an ongoing conversation in terms of that value in kind support that businesses can offer us as well, and in particular for volunteers as well, how to get volunteers to events. So watch this space. Can't say more, sorry.
No, thank you. But clearly that you've listened and you're working on it. So
yeah,
Kelly.
And specifically with the opening as well. I mean, we're looking at how best to navigate people to Headingley, including shuttle buses and safe journeys into.
And I know the first event at Headingley is going to be free, so that's really positive. Okay, thank you. So I'll move on to questions from the board. If anyone wants to ask a question. Okay, I can't start with Councillor Ritchie.
Morning, thank you for your presentations, and just the context for my approach. We are here as critical friends. I'm going to give some feedback on what I've seen so far, and also a couple of questions and thoughts on it. So first of all, on page 16 and the creation stations, I am interested in how many people have actually engaged with those and submitted. I think in your presentation you might have said 1,000 people. So you've had 1,000 bits of artwork in so far, and there's 15,000 tickets. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, that's what I was after. But you mentioned this dashboard, which I don't think is referenced in the papers. If it is, I've missed the link. So maybe some of the questions are answered there. I am a little bit concerned about the consultation and the numbers that have attended. Now, we know from council consultations it is very difficult to get people to events. So I'm not saying you've been a disaster or any worse than anybody else. It's just aware of the challenges, and it's one thing to say we're doing it, but actually, is it reflective of our city that you've reached so far? And I think not. 68 at the Youth Summit, it's not a lot, is it really? And again, more detail about what you're doing in schools, particularly around inviting people to submit pieces of artwork for those that competition for the tickets. Continuing on page 16, and you mentioned the neighbourhood events. Well, the feedback about the Bramley event, while the event was fantastic, really creative, thoroughly enjoyed it, the notice we had wasn't enough, and the attendance from the public was very, very poor. So we can't go back and redo those, but that's an important bit of feedback as well. In terms of the councillor events, they clashed with my diary. I think I had some planning training the other night and so on. Perhaps having them on full council day in the morning or something, when more councillors are likely to be here, you might get more of an uptake, and where you host them as well might improve that consultation and approach. So on to a question now. I've got great confidence in the Bramley neighbourhood host. I think you've made a great appointment, and I'm glad that I suggested that he applied for the job as well. However, I'm just interested in what support and direction you've got in place for the neighbourhood host. Do they know exactly what they're doing, and what their role is? Is that being fully explained to them? So that's one question. And then on the funding, I think that's the fire alarm test.
It's usually a test at this point, so we'll just give it a minute and hopefully it'll turn off again.
Me up as well.
Thanks,
Right.
Councillor Ritchie. Carry on.
So then I suppose it's more for Eve, this one. It is good to see the businesses that have funded, and well done on raising that funding, bringing that into the event. But I have to comment on the WICA funding, the gain share and the business rates pool. I think it's a bit disingenuous actually to count that as additional money. That is still public money. It's not out of our revenue account, but it is money that we could have used in Leeds for something different. So I'd knock out and separate the public money versus the supporters' money. But I do take on board the benefits that this will bring to the city, and I wish it every success. But I do think there are still challenges along the way, and making sure that it really does reach the communities that are easy to ignore. I'm not going to say difficult to engage. I'm going to say easy to ignore. And that's, families that don't necessarily travel into Leeds, and you need to be out on those. And we can help you with the specific areas in our own wards if that's helpful. But I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you for your really helpful comments and questions. So on your earlier observations around the data, we can send around the links for the data from the Open Innovations site after the meeting, so people can have a good look at that. And it's all in the open, which is great. That Leeds 2023 have gone down that route. I'll let Cully and team pick up the question around neighbourhood host training, which I know is very comprehensive, and they might also want to comment about how schools are being engaged on the ballot. On the point about the WICA money, as noted in the report at paragraph 32, that is not in relation to the gain share money or the business rates pool money that we have applied to the Leeds City Council contribution to Leeds 2023. It is a separate contribution that is being made through the allocation that the Mayor has made to her commitment around culture. So there is a specific kind of area where the Mayor and the combined authority together have decided that there will be an additional contribution to Leeds 2023, which is yet to be sort of formally put out to the public domain in terms of the nature of that contribution and how it will go towards Leeds 2023. So just to be really clear, that is not the money that Leeds City Council have chosen to use to reduce our core budget spend on Leeds 2023. It is a separate amount coming from combined authority. Yes, it is coming from gain share, but it is coming from an amount of gain share that has been allocated to culture. Cully, would you like to answer the point about neighbourhood host training?
Thanks very much, Councillor Ritchie, for your comments, and we'll certainly keep a close eye on all of those reflections. In terms of the neighbourhood hosts, I think they've been in post for about 3 weeks, and they are weekly sessions, training sessions planned that will run throughout the year, which is a wide range of capacity building and support for them. The second is that the introduction of the organisations in their wards that can also be support for them, or act as an anchor institution, is also linked to both supporting them as neighbourhood hosts, but also building longer term legacy around those relationships, so that learning and the connections with those communities can be harnessed by the anchor institutions as well, so that there's a shared sense of outreach and opportunity. In terms of schools, we can certainly provide you with a greater detail of work that's happening through our head of creative engagement and learning programme. As we've already said, there's a number of, we're probably actively involved with about 1,000 young people at the moment through schools, but there's a whole range of work that will happen across the year. Some of them are very specifically related to projects like the Great Escape, but others will be to do with teacher development and teaching resources and a whole number of things. And we can certainly perhaps focus on that a bit more at, or send you further details about that if that's helpful. So anything else, Emma, or you'd like to say around that? Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Richard, do you want to come back?
Just on the Eve's answer about the money. I'm just looking at bullet 41, and it says 1, 2, 3, 4 down, 1.8 million were substitutions from the business rates pool and gain share. That's already been paid to Leeds Culture Trust. So is that out of the mayor's pot then, not what might have come to Leeds?
So just to be clear, there have been several times at which where we have chosen to use gain share, which was allocated to Leeds, to apply it as substitution against the Leeds 2023 commitment from the council. So that has happened on 2 occasions. And then we have also used business rates pool on money on several occasions to reduce the council core budget. The circumstances where that gain share came to Leeds City Council is when there was an agreement by all West Yorkshire authorities that a proportion of gain share would be awarded to each local authority for a particular purpose. And Leeds 2023 fit into a purpose to which we could apply that gain share. Does that, I hope that makes sense in terms of, yeah. So there was a decision by all leaders, and each authority received a proportion of gain share. Leeds City Council determined to use its to reduce the reliance on core budget for Leeds 2023. Other authorities choose to use theirs in different ways. Bradford, for example, used some of theirs towards projects which were in support of their Bradford 2025 bid, their successful bid. So that money is different to the reference to WICA money that is in paragraph 32, which is where Leeds 2023 approached the combined authority and the mayor and asked for some support for our year of culture. And so that is coming out of a different kind of, it's still gain share, but it's a different process in the combined authority. It's not money that was kind of shared out across all local authorities in a sort of equal fashion, as it were, or a proportionate fashion. It's money that was allocated to the mayor's commitment to culture. And then there's been a decision that some of that money will come to Leeds 2023. And I think what the easiest way to pass on that money to Leeds 2023 is via Leeds City Council through our grant agreement. So we're acting as like a pass-through agent, if that makes sense. So the money will come through us via our grant agreement, but it's not the same as the money that's being applied in core budget, because it's not something that is being equally given across the local authorities. I hope I've been clear in that, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Okay, Councillor Gruen, please.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie's contribution was quite comprehensive, and some of my points touch on 1 or 2 of the ones that he's made too. But I just want to say I welcome the report. I'm a great fan of culture and arts, and what you've been talking about sounds really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to getting more involved in it. So well done for that. There are just 1 or 2 things I'd like you to clarify for me, please. The heat map that you put up earlier on, I didn't quite fully understand the colour coding of that. So perhaps if we could get that back up again and you could just explain that to me. The bold statements within the report, and this is with my Children's Champions hat on, I'm speaking, that I believe it claims that all children will be able to contribute to this and have experiences within the diet that you are providing. And I'm just wondering how you can make that guarantee. Councillor Ritchie touched on how you're working with schools. I just wonder how you're going to be able to guarantee every child will be able to. Perhaps every child will have an opportunity to. Perhaps not all children will have an opportunity to, bearing in mind that 2/3 of our schools are academies and we don't as a local authority necessarily have direct access to them. So I'm just interested in how you can hold to that guarantee. I would also, along the lines that Councillor Ritchie was mentioning, but a much simpler question. I can see figures in the paper for core budget, trust and foundations funding, education partner funding, total corporate sponsorship. Can you just tell me in simple terms what the council's core budget is against all the other funding that's been levered and what proportionality those two sums are? And I would like to say as well that although I did go to the event in Bramley, which is my ward, where a sort of introductory session at Bramley Baths where people were encouraged to think about being the sponsor. I haven't been able to go to any other events since, and therefore I don't feel included particularly. And the reason is very much as Councillor Ritchie has mentioned, everything has been at short notice, quite a difficult venue if you're sandwiching it between other things. And I do feel that perhaps, particularly when you're involving elected members, you need to work around the opportunities that they already have to come together. Because I would very much have liked to go to last week's event, but I was not able to. Thank you.
So, Rob, could we get the heat map back up while we answer some of the other questions? Could you get the slides back up with the heat map while I answer the questions? So it feels like from the questions we've had so far that the next time we come to scrutiny, we should, in the report, we'll provide a lot more detail about the education and children's engagement, Chair. But in the short term, in a moment, I'll suggest Cully give an update on and respond initially to your question. To your point about contribution, so the council core budget, following the reductions that were made in 2020, when we were doing the budget this time in 2020, when we were making the budget revisions for 2021-22 onwards, made our total contribution from council core budget of 10,665,000 for Leeds 2023. So we are now in a position where of that 10 million figure, 5,731,893 is coming from council core budget. And the amount noted in the report that's coming from external is 5,196,373. So you can look at this from two points of view. The total commitment, including gain share and business rates pool, there is a further 50% that has been secured from third parties compared to our contribution as a council to date, remembering that there is a good year's worth of fundraising that can still go on for Leeds 2023. And I know there is a healthy pipeline that they have of funding applications in place, some of which we're working with them on, for example, in relation to the Shonabare sculpture. Okay, so Cully, do you want to come in on the children's point?
Yes, I guess our aspirations have always been to try and reach 75% of households across the city, but also to reach all of our young people. But I take your point that it's an opportunity. We can't, there's no guarantees, and the context in which we're working in are challenging. But our aspiration would be that every young person has the opportunity to participate in different ways, whether that's through schools or through community groups or through creation station kind of examples. That's what we're trying to do. Really happy to sort of provide some additional information about education and children, and I guess as part of our aspiration to think about what impact we want to have through creativity, you know, young people and our networks accessing that, and also the commitment of the city to being child friendly feel really important alignments, and we're doing everything we can, both in terms of some of the signature projects like like Children's Day, or indeed national programmes that are coming into the city to try and make sure that we get that level of investment coming into Leeds as well for our children, as well as what we're doing in terms of specific projects. Be really happy to talk further or learn more about how else we can try and target those children that might be greatly further away from us than perhaps some schools where there's greater cultural activity. But I hear your point that we can't absolutely guarantee that we can reach every single child.
Yeah, Abby.
Hi. So on the heat map, so we're working with Leeds's Open Data Institute, that's now called Open Innovations, on providing a live dashboard of our activity. So this is an example. All the data flowing into our volunteering system is being translated into this map, and the darker the colour shows the most engagement. And if we're able to get the live dash up, Robert, this we've also mapped all the different activities, so the number of ballot entries, where the volunteers are coming from, schools engagement, the My World, My City, My Neighbourhood project, and we're able to see kind of which wards are engaged. And you'll probably, are you able to pull it up? Is that?
I'm just waiting for the email, so I'll just bear with
Oh,
me.
okay. Yeah. But if not, we'll send the link round after this. And you can, it allows us to see where there's more engagement and where we need to do further work on the ground. So it's a really good measure for us to be able to see on a live basis how we're doing. So that's what that heat map is.
I think, just to be clear, the darker hexes is where there are more volunteers. That's right, Abigail, isn't it?
Yeah. On the live dash, when you look at it on their website, you hover over it and it tells you the numbers.
Rob, could you just bring the hexagons up again?
Yeah.
Please. Because there's comments being made which can't
Slide
be
18.
On the webcast. He's just got several things going on, I think, on his computer. So it's back to
I don't want to hold the meeting up
No,
there. It was just the change of colour that confused me. I'm used to heat maps that are all one colour and different strengths of colour. I just got confused about the blue bits, but that's fine. Please don't waste any more time on that question.
Do you want to come back on any of those comments, Caroline?
No, thank you for answering but I think the points that I've made do still stand, despite the fact that you have addressed them all. That they remain issues, and we'll be interested next time you come back to see, whether you've been able to address that. I mean, I would say ward members can help you with engaging children and engaging schools and so on, but you do have to make yourself accessible to us.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to bring in Councillor Almas next.
Thank you. I think most of the questions and the comments I wanted to make were already been made, but just a quick one in terms of the actual age groups and so on. I really welcome. It's great to see that so many young people have been given an opportunity and various other opportunities to get involved. The awakening and the concept behind it is absolutely brilliant. But I'd be more interested to find out about how you'd be engaging, for example, with people with disabilities, people who are, for instance, of different cultural backgrounds and so on. For example, reaching out to the gurdwaras and mosques and temples and so on and so forth. So the culture aspect of it, I'd be interested to find out more about it, but I'm sure you can send us that information. But I really welcome the initiatives that have been taken. One quick suggestion would be, it's great to have that democratic, if you like, way of engaging in terms of submitting artwork and so on and so forth. But I think in some ways it will be limiting some people as well who are not perhaps as, so in terms of that awakening concept, awakening the artist within you, I think it'll be great to give people some opportunity and encourage people more, even though if they're not that, if you like, so for example, like me, who's not a great poet, but yeah, how could you encourage people like that? Thank you.
So just to say, yeah, they were doing a lot of work to try and show kind of what, give examples of the type of things people are submitting, but also give it some inspiration. So we've created a whole section of creative learning resources on our website. Over on Instagram, we've got the Channel 4 work experience, content creatives working on putting reels together, showing how to make autumn pictures, for example, from leaves. So really being practical around, you don't need to be a world-class poet to enter this competition. So we'll be continuing to inspire people through that. We've also got some famous Leeds people, like the chef from Home Restaurant, talking about the food she makes, but also some of the divers that were involved in the Olympics, giving their examples of creativity. So it really is about trying to break down that barrier that in all of us, we express ourselves in some form that is creative, and we want to encourage as many different forms. We're also looking at putting a tool on our website that people can directly kind of submit something creative from our website by using a digital tool. So and the creation stations in the shopping centres, in the community organisations, you know, we're just putting out papers, pens, you know, and encouraging people to get creative in whatever way they wish. So we are doing quite a lot of engagement around that, but because we take on that point that there might be a sense that, oh, I'm not an artist, but actually we're trying to say that everybody has creativity within them, and we want to use this as an opportunity to unleash that and celebrate all the creativity in the city.
Yeah, looking at the heat map, I think I could kind of see that perhaps the wards or the areas that were the outer city were less, if you like, dark. So yes, it's great to have, you know, if you like, people who live close to Headingley getting part, and obviously have more opportunities to live close to the centre, also encouraging people from outer, if you like, areas of Leeds.
For sure. So that was just a map on the volunteering. So we've got a map on the ballot entry, so we can see exactly where those ballot entries are coming from. So again, we'll circulate the right link so you can have a live look, and then we've aggregated it all as well. So actually you'll see it's a much more even distribution if you count up all the different activity that's been taking place in the school's activity. But yeah, we can share that with you.
Yeah, just to make a brief comment about the data and the heat maps. Obviously, you're right. I think, Kevin, you said it was very much North Leeds. It's showing kind of where there's a bit more engagement with volunteers. The point of collecting this data isn't so we collect it and say, oh, isn't that nice? They're all from here. It's actually so then we can see kind of where the gaps are, where we're not having as much engagement, where people aren't coming to volunteer, and then we can concentrate some of the efforts on those areas. So, for example, if in your own ward, for example, we're seeing, oh, we're not getting many ballot entries from there, 23 can kind of say, right, well, what can we do to engage more? We can use the neighbourhood hosts, we can use the Anchor Institute, Anchor organisation in that ward to go and target there. If there's a ward where there's a huge amount of engagement, there's a bit of, well, that's going on fine, we can kind of focus elsewhere. So the data isn't just for information, isn't that interesting? It actually will shape how the organisation will work, because it is really important that we do get that engagement from all parts of the city.
And just to add to one extra bit around that is that clearly it'll build momentum across the year as more activity gets embedded and more of the projects are more obviously announced. So it is a tool for us in all sorts of ways, I think, and also to identify where skills capacity building areas where there might be low engagement, where we can be really specifically focusing on that, and we'll need all of your help to identify how best to maximize those opportunities. But that's work that's already beginning to take shape around some of the work that's planned for next year.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. And I would echo most of my colleagues' comments. Just a couple of questions, if I may. I remember when we spoke about this earlier in the year at another scrutiny board, we discussed the importance of perhaps not excuse me, my throat's sore, not just concentrating on the low-hanging fruit, for want of a better term, which is the school children who are kind of captive in school, and the people who would already attend activities that the anchor organisations are doing. And I think that's very apparent in the ward I represent, as it is, I would suspect, looking at the heat map along with the wards. So we also spoke about cross-generational work and the absolute benefits of that. So looking at the data in the report and the data that's been included on the presentation today, one of the things we discussed earlier in the year was the opportunity for small grants or bids, whatever you want to call them, that would enable people who wouldn't engage any other way to run a small project or a pilot to engage, because there are huge pockets of people who don't think this is anything to do with them. And we need to kind of get rid of that rhetoric. I would echo what my colleague Caroline said, feel totally excluded, didn't even know where the event in my ward was taking place. So the members can help you, but perhaps we need a little bit more involvement. So too, plans to engage people who just are not engaged, don't see this as being for them, because there's 12 huge projects, isn't it? Great, you know, no criticism, but actually I think of equal value, not sure how much that's worth, would be small ward-based or community-based projects that people can get behind. Teach them a bit of crochet, they can make their own clothes. I just said that as an aside, but it's something that interests people and can fight some of the other problems, societal problems that we've got. Okay.
May I just come in first? So Councillor Burke, I'm sure Colleen may want to comment on My Leeds 2023, and that's how that's actually going to then work in sort of projects locally. But just, I think last time we had the discussion, we also talked about the arts, the cultural programmes that we run as a council. Currently known around as Arts at Leeds and Leeds Inspired. And Leeds Inspired is designed to do exactly what you've just described, so people can apply for small grants in where they are. One of the things that, you know, I'd like to take our lead from Leeds 2023 actually is really get that data about where people are applying for grants from Leeds Inspired, and to kind of make sure that we understand where that's happening across the city, and then make sure that people are aware of those grants and work with members to make sure people can make the most of Leeds Inspired grants, both this year and into future years. Because it's exactly those little seed projects that encourage people to get involved in culture, and from small seeds, large acorns grow, including the Transform Festival, which became a national portfolio organisation by the Arts Council on Friday, which is absolutely amazing. So, you know, from a small investment from Leeds City Council, that is now a national portfolio organisation with the Arts Council. So I think there's sort of perhaps, you know, we can always do more. So I think like with Leeds Inspired, that's a good challenge to say, let's make sure we look at the data really closely about where those grants are being made and how we can work with members to encourage more people to get more from them. So that's just thought it was worthwhile commenting on that. And then maybe Emma, are you coming in? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So just to pick up on some of the points about smaller activities, obviously we've spoken quite a lot about the 12 signature projects. Alongside that, there are a number of other projects and activities that are taking place that are smaller, that take place in lots of different locations, and many of which are led by different groups of people. That includes the next stage of My World, My City, My Neighbourhood, and also the Hidden Stories Heritage Lottery Fund programme, which will take place next year. They include a whole variety of different scales of activities that people can get involved in. My Leeds as well, obviously, is the reason why it becomes a bigger project or a bigger moment is because it's an accumulation of lots of smaller based activities too that we just want to really highlight and celebrate. So I guess I just wanted to clarify that as well as the 12 biggies, we're also going to have some quite a lot of different smaller based activities as well that are a real range, everything from very specific neighbourhood based activities to projects such as with Hidden Stories, just to reflect on some of your comments as well, that included a whole programme of work focusing on faith-based activities and faith leaders. So I do hope that there is quite a good mix and a different range of scales and levels at which people can get involved in next year.
Thank you. And I fully appreciate what you said, but it still, there's a bit of a dichotomy, I think, between what you're answering and what I'm asking, because in our ward, and that's the one I can speak about with any confidence. Despite all the work, and there has been a huge amount of work around digital inclusion, we still have a huge amount of people who are digitally excluded. So therefore, they will never look on the website. They'll never be able to engage. So we do desperately need alternative ways of engaging with those people. And there's been a lot of work around digital inclusion, rather. It's not a criticism, but it's not working. They can't afford to have the interweb in the house. They can't do this, they can't do that. So there is work. They will be excluded. Huge benefit, reliance, it will exclude them. So I'm talking about small pepper grounds. They won't apply for those other ones because they don't have the skills, knowledge, they don't think it's for them. So perhaps we can have a discussion about how those people can be included.
I'd really welcome that discussion, also to say that part of the reason why we set up the neighbourhood host programme as well is so that we can learn about what different ways of communicating with people work better on a much more on the ground level, so that we're not just relying on digital ways of talking to people and letting them know what we've got going on next year. But I'd really welcome the conversation.
To be fair to Leeds 2023, I'm not sure they'd be able to establish the infrastructure necessary to try and achieve that. And I think it's our responsibility as council officers to work with Leeds 2023 to make sure that we can make the most of our infrastructure, like Leeds libraries. Leeds libraries have supported us in the past when we've been doing online consultations elsewhere in my portfolio to make sure that we can engage with people who can't be reached digitally. So working with Karen, I'll ensure that we look at different ways that we can help get materials out into communities to groups of people that are not necessarily accessing things over the web. So thanks, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Flynn.
Thanks, Andrew. I think most of the points I was going to raise have been more than adequately covered sort of so far. Just on funding, I was rather surprised at the relative lack of corporate funding, basically just less than £400,000, I think. And I just wondered if there are obviously economic reasons around that, but it seems a very, very small amount for the kind of legacy that we're trying to sort of, have in Leeds. The engagement with Ward Council, I think, is very, very important. That's been covered as well. I'm meeting my neighbourhood host on Wednesday night, or Wednesday afternoon rather, hopefully to find out a lot more about what's happening sort of locally with me. We have a youth summit on the 3rd of March next year, which hopefully will include the vast majority of schools, both primary and secondary in my ward. It would be nice to have somebody there from your organisation, basically, to let people know how things are going, and particularly to see whether the children have actually grasped what it's all about, sort of thing. And sort of finally, very good luck with it. It's a huge undertaking, very difficult period economically for everybody, and I wish you every success with it. Okay.
Thank you very much. It goes without saying that we formed as an organisation in the most extraordinary of circumstances. So I think Abigail can talk a little bit more about our relationships with the corporate sector. But I think those relationships are building strongly, and we have managed to create a momentum despite the 2 years we've had, and that's in no it's in collaboration with the support we've had from City Council. It's also worth noting that investment that's coming into the city is happening, and whilst we might not be able to claim that some of the there is a direct correlation between the investment from Arts Council, for example, 34% increase has come. Some of it is directly a result of the work we've done with our partners. So the performance ensemble has been something that's been part of the bid programme, and we've continued to develop it, and it's had significant investment now and become a national portfolio organisation. And that's an example of an older group. Everyone who's involved in it is over 60. They're bringing their experience and insights. They're generating additional creativity with that population, but also looking at how they can connect with young people as a cross-generational thing. The level of investment they'll get and the fact that they've got a three-year funding program now will have a lasting impact, I think, and that those are examples. Similarly with Transform, and also some of the smaller projects that are the artists and creatives are doing, where they are bidding for additional money. It is generating additional investment coming into this city, and a recognition that the city is doing something very powerful around culture and well-being and connectivity. So I hope that whilst we can't claim all of that, I think the journey together with the City Council and the fact that we're putting the city on the map as a cultural powerhouse will have a lasting impact despite the economic journey that we've been on over the last few years. Abigail.
Just to touch upon the engagement with the corporate sector. I mean, you mentioned it in your comments that, of course, during this extraordinary period, corporates have scaled back on marketing spend, CSR spend as a response to the pandemic. However, what we have, and also just to say, we know from colleagues elsewhere working in the country on major events like the Commonwealth Games, they have struggled to secure the corporate levels of funding that might once have come their way years ago. We also have to recognise that I think we've got a really good group of businesses and sectors in Leeds who can do support culture ongoing, but it's not at the levels that you would you might assume. And often if it's a Leeds office, they often have to go to London if their national headquarters are in London to get the spend in the regions, and that sometimes just isn't there. So we're trying to work around that. We're doing an engagement, some corporate engagement tomorrow in London, in fact, with some major FMCG brands, and we are hopeful. While those figures are published now, we've got another document with what's in the pipeline, and we've got some big proposals on the table with other corporates that I'm hoping that if we convert next time we come, we'll have boosted that figure. So it is ongoing, but it is challenging, and the levels of corporate support are not where they were, say, around the time of London Olympics, for example.
The only other thing to add is that, of course, some of the corporates have also offered us in-kind support, and that is quite significant in terms of some of the areas of delivery that we've needed to, whether that's legal, whether that's around engineering, contractual stuff, or IP. That sort of work is also happening.
Good luck with the pitch.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Emir France.
I think my question has already been asked regarding the inclusion of young people with complex needs and making sure that they're going to be catered for with this programme. I know that you've got so much to do with such a small team, and I know you're beyond capacity, but I just wish you all the best for next year, because I'm looking forward to it myself.
Thank you. So I think that has been answered. So if we move on, is that okay, Councillor Emir France? Okay, Councillor Firth.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much. And most of the questions that I wanted to ask have certainly been asked, but I do appreciate the name check by Eve in relation to funding. But I just want to come to that in a second after asking a relevant question to what's been raised already. It was great to meet some of the community hosts when some of us could make it into town last week, which was a struggle, despite it being peak time. That some of them are some fantastic representatives for our community. I am concerned, though, being a critical friend, by the fact that we have only received effectively the equivalent to 2 applications per ward. And I appreciate that we've recruited all 33, but certainly going back, I think that we need to reevaluate certainly how the recruitment process was undertaken, given that the response and such a fantastic role that could play. And I think that feeds into potentially a further question, which I will ask after this one, which is in relation to the actual expansion of the outreach overall in the city. Could you give us some more detail, particularly when it comes to the sort of seed funding in the communities? I understand that each of the community hosts will be given a grant to be able to, of their own decision making to be able to realise where that funding could go, and having worked with their partner or anchor organisations, they're able to decide where potentially funding may not come from others, that actually they think that would be a valuable project in their community. So I wondered if that could be the first bit of information that you could provide for us, and really what the accountability of those will be, just really to establish that here in this scrutiny setting. And the second point is that what I mentioned before in relation to the awakening, there are, according to the report, 14 locations of post boxes. The vast majority of those post boxes seem to be in areas where potentially actually it links that the volunteers have come from, but also particularly that it isn't actually just North Leeds that's potentially having a good and strong showing when it comes to volunteers. It actually looks like that all of the donut around Leeds seems to have been not neglected, but seems to be lagging behind the rest of the city. Is it the case that if you submit, for example, a piece of artwork or some submission in a city centre postbox, that you have to submit that with your address to be able to then make sure that that's notified and noticed in the correct ward? And ultimately, I'm very surprised that there hasn't been more advertising in sort of the outer locations. I use in my particular case, council buildings that include the Aerium, which is a major council facility, as well as also major libraries out in the outer areas, as well as also places like Wetherby, Lotherton Hall, and other major council institutions. So is that something that is looking to be going out there in terms of trying to improve the visibility of Leeds 2023 and ensure that more people, wherever they are, can see that this is actually going to be happening next year? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor for some really helpful questions. So I think I'll let Abigail comment, but the hex map, as I understand it, shows digital online submissions and not, there is a lag, I think, between someone putting something into the post box and then that popping up in the numbers. So I'm not sure whether we can do a causal link between where the post boxes are and the number of number of entries, but I'll let the 2023 team comment further on that. And of course, we can, in terms of your comment about promoting the ballot at our own council locations, of course, we can do that as a further push. And we'll speak with Abigail about just making sure we get collateral out to some of those sites to use that opportunity, because I think that's a very fair observation that we should be maximising that opportunity. So we'll pick that up. Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the hex map of the ballot submissions, and I think it gives, I don't want you to take the hex map of the volunteering as the representative of all the engagement, because there are different hex maps on this site. So we need to circulate that, and you'll be able to see, yeah. In terms of engaging on the ground, so we did things like we did a special wrap with the Yorkshire Evening Post that included actually a space for people to do their drawings and upload, and we have got a bit of a lag on the physical uploads, but we have now speeded up that process, so I think they will start coming through. We're also developing collateral that will be circulated to the libraries and community centre networks, and the next major push we'll be announcing, which I should have mentioned in my presentation, sorry, on early December, we'll be announcing what's in that first programme of work from January to April, and we will have a physical guide that will also be distributed in communities. So there'll be a physical guide that people can pick up, and we will include multiple languages in that as well. So there's a lot of work being done. We don't have endless advertising budgets, unfortunately. So we're looking at ways in which we can use other forms and other channels and PR as well. And if you've got any ideas of how best to engage with your particular ward, then please do speak to us, because, kind of definitely our passion is to make sure that every single of those 33 wards, the people there feel included. And the community, yeah.
Yep, so just on the grants programme that's attached to My Leeds, just to clarify, the neighbourhood hosts won't be operating in isolation to make their own decisions about where grants will be spent in their ward. As part of their training programme, they'll come together to develop a really clear grant making policy. This is also about us developing really good insight into how community-led grants programs can be designed and delivered. That's part and parcel what My Leeds is also trying to do. So as part of the training program, they'll have a number of sessions on how they want to develop the grants program, how that will be distributed and how decisions will be made. So we can't answer specifically right now to say this is exactly what that will look like, because it's part of the co-creation and the co-design of the grants program that we'll do that work with them. But just to be super clear that they won't operate in isolation to make that decision, and also that Leeds Culture Trust has a grant making policy and procedure already in place that this will have to fit into. So in terms of accountability, it's very much within Leeds Culture Trust's accountability to monitor and make sure that that is a fair distribution and process.
Thank you, Councillor Firth.
Thank you for those answers. It is appreciated. I think the big point is that we've got some really key sites from our leisure centres, from everywhere, all the way from Kippax to Wetherby, and particularly if you look at the east of Leeds, and other areas that I think really should be areas that a lot of these people that are not engaging at the moment do use on a regular basis. And I think they're really quick and easy wins that should be used. And I'm surprised, if I'm honest, that they haven't been used already, if there isn't any leaflets or literature, if not posters or anything bigger than that. But I'm glad to hear that certainly that's going to be coming up in the future. The second question I was going to ask is in relation to funding. It was mentioned that I mentioned this at the last meeting, so I went back and had a look at the March report and compared the figures as such. And it's good to see that certainly there's been an increase of what's been fundraised of around about 1.7 million in addition to what was already in the kitty already. I have some complications that I would appreciate some clarification on in terms of the actual net commitment of the council. I understand that it's gone down from 7.2 million to 5.7 million, but also there's the figure of 7.3 also mentioned in there as well in terms of net commitment. So it'd be helpful to confirm that the net commitment hasn't actually gone up and that it has actually, after all that hard work, gone down. Also, in terms of the figures looking at health, higher education and further education between March and November, the figure seems to have fallen slightly by 15,000. Just wondered whether there's any further work in the pipeline or whether that's something that was a figure that needs to be clarified. And also, as Councillor Flynn has also mentioned, there is a slight view here of potentially, is there a reluctance from those corporate sponsors to be involved, because it just seems to be a very top heavy sponsorship with 5.2 million coming from trusts and foundations. And could you just establish a bit more meat on the bone about the different levels of sponsorship involved, from platinum members or premium members down to Leeds 2023 members for corporate sponsorship? Thank you very much.
So just in relation to the figure, which I believe it's paragraph 41, penultimate bullet, I think it's just in the phrasing. So the first sentence where it says spend will be 7,376,000. That's the spend including like BRP substitutions, WICA, etc. The final bullet where it talks about the net commitment relates to the core budget. So I think we should have just probably tightened the wording up slightly. So that, just to clarify, that's the meaning in relation to those two numbers. So over to the team to talk on the other point.
So on corporate sponsorship, so we obviously wanted to develop a scheme that could be accessible from SMEs right up to major businesses in the city. So our scheme, kind of normally, it starts off at that, £5,000 membership level, which for some small businesses is a bit of an ask. So that's why we also combine value in kind support. So organisations that can support us in other ways, and we value that up, and then that becomes part of the package. And then we have, kind of your standard, gold and platinum levels, which I think are 25,000 and then 50,000. At headline level, we're talking to businesses at around that £100,000 mark. But again, that is a combination of cash and in-kind support, which could link to advertising or kind of use of space in the year, or as Cully mentioned, legal support, IP support. So kind of that's the reality. I think it would be fair to say that not many businesses kind of are able to support with cash injections of above those levels. That's the reality of the world we're living in. What I would say is that we're gaining momentum. We're working with partners like the Chamber of Commerce, Yorkshire Mafia, and other networks to try and leverage in as much as possible. I think it's also worthwhile noting, and perhaps we can circulate this around. We did some economic research a couple of years ago. You might remember seeing that. And they did an assessment of the amount of corporate support versus other forms of funding for other European Capital of Culture bids. And it is actually quite small when you look at it alongside state funding or kind of public funding. So I think we're pretty much on track. And as I've mentioned, I am hopeful we've got some pretty good proposals on the table, a number of companies, and hopefully we will get that figure up and we will keep on trying. And the nearer we get to the year, and once organisations see the benefits of what we're doing, that is also helpful in terms of getting people over the line. We should just say that we've just hired a food and beverage and commercial manager as well, who'll be looking at working with some of the food and beverage organisations to see if we can leverage in commercial relationships as well.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Jen, and thank you for those clarifications. I think the big thing that may be taking as feedback, especially given that this is probably the last actual report back to this board until actually we begin next year, is actually for that to be broken down, because it really will help in terms of either the public or even councillors and elected members accessing reports to be able to see what work's been going in. And actually, if you are able to clarify, if not actual to give the detail of what has been provided, but the sort of value in terms of potentially the sort of commitments that others are making, I think it can really help in terms of establishing, given that there's a lot of scrutiny, given the current climate that we're in, that actually the work that you're doing is making sure that if you're not actually getting cash in kind, you're actually getting facilities, and therefore you're not having to pay for that, and that money is then going back into the programme for the year. I think it just really will help in terms of making it easier to digest that information going forward, especially when we do hit the ground running in 2023. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll take that as a comment. Okay, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. Again, along with everybody else, a lot of what I was going to mention or say has already been covered, but I would like to go back to the ward engagement again. And I should have declared an interest because I am the anchor organisation for Rothwell, working with a community host.
You are.
I am.
You personally?
Well, Crown is, and I'm the Crown representative for that. So yes. So I'm linking in with Claire for our area, and she's very good. She's very bright, and we've had one meeting, and very enthusiastic. What does concern me is she is the only person I've spoken to about anything that's happening in the ward. Now, you mentioned Rothwell Temperance Band. Well, that's a flipping big band that's based in Rothwell that wins awards, and the only reason I know it was involved was at the 100 Days launch event. Not one comment from anybody has told the councillors in that ward what's going on. You also put up a picture up that's got the rhubarb sheds, which again is the rhubarb triangle, of which Rothwell is a big part of it. So I think those are pretty good examples of how we're not being involved, and that we can help you, as we've all said. Going to Sam's point about the posters and flyers, we had a community cafe on Saturday with over 100 people in there. Now, we did mention this in August, and we would very much welcome someone coming along on the first Saturday in the month to put a display up to show our residents what's going on, and then we can engage with them. Because I think what we're going to find is the only people that will get involved in any of these things are the same old people. Yeah. And it's the same old groups. So, and that's fine, but we're nearly at the start of the year, and those people are already committed to the things they already do in the community. So where are they going to find more time to do more things? Because my concern is we're going to end up with nothing in the wards and everything in the centre. And that seems to be what's being reflected at the moment in the heat map. So it is a comment, but I am concerned about it, and I'm not sure we are doing everything we can to get our wards engaged.
Thank you. Eve, do you want to respond? Yep.
Of course. I think we just need to be careful that we've only seen one of the heat maps that Leeds 2023 produced, and it's just about volunteer recruitment, not not about ticket ballot application. So, you know, perhaps when we come to scrutiny next time, we'll do a more kind of, you know, broader overview. So that we're not assuming that one set of behaviours is the same around other things. So we'll just a little bit of kind of warning on that front. So there's been quite a few comments about member engagement. So we'll keep at that, but we have tried really hard working with Leeds 2023 over the summer to provide quite a number of occasions. We did talk about doing something around full council, but there was a view that actually members would really like to be invited to the 100 Days to Go event and to be able to be part of an event which was being hosted by Gabby, where there was an opportunity to meet a whole range of stakeholders. And that's why we chose to accommodate elected members through that at that point in time. So having heard what members have said today, we'll look at an opportunity to make sure there's an event before a full council upcoming in a morning to, and we'll look at the best format for that and talk to a number of members about the best way we might do that, just to keep the conversation going in that respect. December, I'm sure, will be possible. We'll take a look, and then I'll let Leeds 2023 come in on more detail around kind of some of the projects ongoing, etc.
Thank you, and also thanks for your support in terms of the anchor organisation work. I think one of the challenges that we've got is that quite a lot of the activity that we've been doing so far has been about us piloting and testing activity to see what works, and sometimes that has also meant that we've not necessarily like, for example, the image there of the rhubarb triangle, that's a project that we've been testing over the last 18 months now, and it's probably only been in the last, well, since 100 Days to Go that we've spoken about it in a very public way, because we haven't wanted to say that this will definitely absolutely be going ahead in this exact way until we've tested it out and we've worked and we know that people want to engage with it and want to take part in it, and now we're pushing it forward. So I hope that there won't be too many more issues with you not necessarily knowing exactly what different activities might relate to your ward, and I take on any feedback about ways that we can make that easier for you and continue to make sure that we are in communication with you going forward.
Thank you very much, Emma. Okay, I'm going to move on to Councillor Carlisle.
Thanks, Chair. I would just wanted to touch on the neighbourhood hosts a bit more, because I think they're one of the really fantastic opportunities out of this, I see, especially in my ward, and a real place where Leeds 2023 can add value, because I understand they're the ones really getting in depth, finding out what is there, what they can amplify, and where there are gaps, because I represent the ward, and I'm sure many others do, with lots of different distinct separate communities, some of whom are completely different culturally and demographically than any of the others, and so I guess when I'm looking at the hex map, I'm not really worried as much of what the number of people is in my ward. It's where that is in the ward, you know. So I know I talked previously about Sunnybank Mills. It's great that they're there as a really big institution, but they're one side of the ward, and if you're interacting with them, you're probably already interacting with culture, but there's another side of the ward which would be completely separate from that culturally. So I think that's really good, and I know our neighbourhood host, and that's a great choice that's been made of somebody that is artistically connected to the ward and has been involved in community volunteering and other things. So I guess around, and I know that they'll look at those bits of the ward in depth and understand that, and I'm trying to help them do that. But I think it'd be really useful. We've touched on the training that they're getting, but the kind of encouragement and the expectations from yourselves that they've got into the ward and what they're trying to create. It'd be good to hear a bit about that, so we know how we can support, how we can make those connections to different places, and how they're really going to add value, because I think they're the ones that will understand our wards. There's no point me necessarily telling you all about my ward, because you're then going to go back and have to think of all 33. But if that one person understands exactly what's going on where, then that's the point of it, as far as I see it. So I just wondered where they fit into the overall targets, so that then we can support them as ward members in dumping all that information on them.
Yeah, thank you. So the ultimate purpose for the neighbourhood host is that, and the ultimate aim of the training programme is that they'll be able to go forward to deliver activities and events in their community during 2023, but also way afterwards. So the types of the training program that they're going through includes everything from very practical things like what kind of licenses and permissions might you need to have in place to put on an event in your neighborhood, right the way through to how does grant distribution work currently with lots of different types of funders, how might you design your own grant-based activity, what opportunities are already available within your area in terms of the asset mapping that we've been doing, and we're working quite closely with and taking quite a lot of inspiration from the ABCD approach for that. So fundamentally, their primary purpose is to make sure that the events that take place as part of the My Leeds activity next year are great, and that lots of people can come along to them and take part of them and help to make them happen too. Alongside that, they also are working with us to help us speak about the work that Leeds 2023 is doing more broadly and what opportunities are available for people to get involved. So every time we have an opportunity available that people can apply for or take part in. So for example, you may have seen that currently there's an opportunity for young music promoters to take part in delivering events and activities next year and get paid to go on a big training scheme and put on their own activities in partnership with lots of other music organisations in the city. That's exactly the kind of opportunity that we would share with all of our neighbourhood hosts to say, do you know people and can you help us reach people who might want to apply for this? So there's the element of what they'll deliver, and then there's also the element of how they help us communicate with people on a much more localised basis throughout the year. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I can expand. Yeah, I think that's really useful because, I mean, this is a resource that suddenly can build quite a lot of capacity in communities and can even out the capacity across wards and communities. So I guess a couple of things off that. They'll be our key contacts as councillors. If we do raise issues that are of the level that they're strategically important to Leeds 2023, will there be a way of them feeding them back so we know that the work done across the board, really, it can be impacted by what they're hearing on the ground? And the second bit is, I guess, how do they fit in their targets? So will they have similar ideas of how they fit with the numbers of people you want to engage with? So obviously the schools, you'll be doing that directly through the schools, but in terms of the 75% of people communicating, will they have the expectation that they have to try and make sure that comes to fruition and get those gaps and are able to work on it as well?
I think it's worth saying that the neighbourhood hosts are one small element of a big, ambitious plan, and that we can't assume that they're going to deliver all these things for us, not least because part of their journey is about capacity building and personal development. And that's a longer term ambition for the city to kind of ensure that the investment we're trying to make and the testing that's happening is embedded in our communities and understood, and there's learning taken from that. In the context of the neighbourhood house, we're trying to, on a weekly basis, meet with them, have training sessions with them, but there's also peer support, given that there's 33 of them, and there'll be different moments when they can reflect on what's worked, what hasn't worked, and share each other's practice. I think David Cartwright, who's leading on that programme, is a core member of our staff team. So part of that is also for us regularly to kind of go, what are we learning? How does that impact on our more strategic ambitions in terms of our creative learning and engagement programme? And how does that then play out in terms of where we're getting successes and where we aren't yet hitting the mark, and what else might we want to do? It's useful just to say that actually we absolutely hear all of the concerns and all of the recommendations you're offering up and insights you're offering up. We're also having to navigate quite a complex context in terms of people's ability to engage and in terms of our capacity as quite a light organisation in terms of numbers and what we're trying to do, and to see how we can best do that through partnership working. And I think in terms of what you're offering as councillor support, I think there's more that we can do to try and make that in conversations with Eve and Karen, how we might communicate better and get greater clarity around that. So we'll be in touch, I think, on how we might do more of that. But our neighbourhood hosts also need looking after. and protecting, because what we don't want them to do is feel completely overwhelmed and have huge expectations that then mean that they're actually unable to do the thing that we're trying to get them to develop in the wards.
So yes, just to clarify, the neighbourhood host won't be responsible for us reaching our KPIs, such as 75% of households participate in the year, or the number of schools or young people that take part. There are specific targets associated with My Leeds that we will of course share with them, but it's the responsibility of the Leeds Culture Trust team to also make sure that we are reaching those targets. It's not a case that they will be solely responsible for any of that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burke, did you want to comment?
Thanks, Chair. Just really briefly, I can just rewind a little bit to the funding that the community hosts will be responsible for. I've got that in inverted commas. Given the hours that they work, is it 3 to 6, something like that per week? I'm sure I read that somewhere. So it's quite small. I think, and I'm going to speak for my colleagues, I'm sure they'll all shout up if they disagree. I'm sure the ward members would be very much want to be engaged in any grant applications to small projects in the wards. And that would be on several levels, wouldn't it? It would be identifying them, because I'm sure we already know some now, and perhaps being part of any panel that allocates, or we may have background information towards the refusal or the approval of any bids. So I think if you could take that on board, or that would be really, really useful.
Does anyone want to respond to that, or should we take it as a comment? Are you happy for it to be a comment, Councillor Burke? Yeah, okay, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, just very quickly on the grants process, if it is being designed, one of the things we struggle with a lot, and we have brought it up before, is it's okay having a grant, but do you get it in advance, or are you expected to fund these things and claim the money back? It depends on how the process works, but expecting small community groups that don't normally do this sort of thing to have that sort of funding available to them in the short term is something you need to think about, because it is difficult to fund some events. It's just a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Chapman. Yeah, you have raised that point before, so at the last meeting on this. So thank you very much. We've got to the end of questions, so I'm going to ask Councillor Pride, do you want to make any closing remarks at the end of this section?
Thanks, Chair. Just really want to thank Cully, Emma and Abigail for coming here today. I mean, what they're undertaking in 2023 is enormous. I think it will really impact the city in a huge way, and I think it won't be until the 7th of January when we have the launch event. I think people aren't going to fully kind of see the scale of it. I'm really confident it's going to hit all parts of the city, whether that be kind of the outskirts as well as the centre. And I think a lot of the work we've seen here today, I know obviously we've made the point about we've only seen one heat map, we'll be seeing several, will really shape the work going forward to ensure we do reach everyone. I do really want to urge all members to reach out to their community hosts. Myself and my ward colleagues, we're in the process of arranging to go for a coffee with ours, just to see what we can do as ward members to support them in their work, because it's really important. It's not the sort of relationship where we as councillors are going to scrutinise them. It's a partnership, and we as councillors can really help them get into every part of the ward to make sure what they do is absolutely maximised. I appreciate there have been a lot of comments about member engagement, and obviously we've kind of had the leaflets, there have been emails, there have been meetings, but I appreciate if members are still feeling they're not knowing enough, we'll go away and think about how we can get through to members on top of all of that. We'll certainly take that away. But yeah, just as this will be the last time 23 are here before the year, just want to wish them all the luck, and looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. Yeah, I echo what Councillor Price said, and personally I've like what you're doing with some of the neighbourhood partnerships, like Slunglow and the work they're doing with England Road Primary School. I think that's really fantastic to see that happening. So thanks for your time, and thanks for listening to some of the more critical comments as well. So thank you very much. Okay, so just in terms of managing the meeting, Eve's here for the next item anyway. So once we've had the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, we'll have a 5-minute break just so people are aware that's going to happen. But we won't have a break yet. So thanks to Leeds 2023, and we'll just move on to seamlessly onto UK Shared Prosperity Fund with Eve presenting that. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So what you have in front of you, Scrutiny, is the Executive Board paper that was considered at the last Executive Board in October on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund with Executive Board and approved. Just by way of kind of covering a few key points for context of UK Shared Prosperity Fund. It was launched in April 2022. It's intended as a replacement for the European Structural Investment Fund, or ESIF. The primary goal set by the government is to build pride in place and increase life chances across the UK. And it has 3 investment priorities, which are really clear. So community is in place, supporting local businesses and people and skills. And since the announcement in April, there's been a subsequent announcement in the summer around the Rural England Prosperity Fund, and the launch of that, with a submission due by the combined authority in relation to that at the end of November 2022 for an April 2023 delivery. Just to remind everybody, the Shared Prosperity Fund is for 3 years, including 3 financial years, including the financial year that we are in. And unlike ESIF, the money does have to be spent in financial year. You can't carry over money between financial years. Just a few other key points for context, all in the paper, but I think it's always useful when you've got something so complex in front of you, just to, not least for myself, to remind everybody of the context here. So as a mayoral combined authority, the West Yorkshire Combined Authority will be the lead authority for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. There's a figure of 80.5 million, which has been allocated for the region. Just important to note that within that, 68 million is considered what's called core UK SPF. And 12.5 million has already been allocated by the government to a programme called Multiply, which is about improving adult numeracy. And that's both targeted at providing online courses, but also to support businesses to train their staff where they feel their staff would benefit from improving their numeracy. Of the 68 million, 30 million has been allocated in principle by the combined authority to the 5 local authorities to deliver local activity, predominantly under the communities and place pillar, although they were happy for us to think about projects that cut across all 3 of those areas. And the value of the allocation to Leeds through that is £9.4 million. That doesn't appear in the Executive Board report because it was only reported afterwards in a combined authority report. So if you were wondering why that figure wasn't in there. Within that context, then, just again, these are things that are in the report, but just to make sure everyone's up to speed, the local investment plan was submitted by WICA to government in July, and we expect confirmation of its approval or otherwise imminently. It was intended to be the end of October. I suspect now it may be aligned to the budget. I mean, that's my guess. We haven't seen any communications, but given all of the kind of work that's going on around budget, I imagine it may kind of come through in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, that's important for us to get that confirmation, because to be able to spend the money in financial year, we need to be able to get those projects motoring on a local basis. WICA have set up a local partnership group and an MP engagement group. Each of the local authorities has completed a business case for its investment, which has been approved at combined authority meeting on the 21st of October. So Leeds, we did a business case to cover the Leeds specific aspects of the spend, as did every other local authority, and that's been approved. The executive board paper was approved, as I mentioned, and the only other thing to touch on is the Rural Prosperity Fund. So that's obviously in development now. There is a kind of smaller figure available for Leeds, in that I think from memory it's in the region of 2.5 million. Yeah, so 2.5 million for the whole region, for the Rural England Prosperity Fund, some of which will be relevant to Leeds because of the nature of our authority. It is, the thing to note about that fund is that it's small scale capital, whereas UK SPF is predominantly revenue with some small elements of capital. That's probably more than enough by way of intro, Chair.
Thank you very much. The only thing I'd add that's worth noting, that I noticed on page 56 of our pack, is that the delivery is obviously due to start October/November, and so if you don't get approval soon and it has to be spent in that year, it's going to be extremely challenging to do. I'd give that as a comment, because I think it's unless you want to add something to that, Eve.
The only thing to add is that, so it's what we've tried to do, because we knew that the decision was coming in October for this financial year, is identify projects where you can easily scale up activity that might already be underway that's relevant to UK SPF to do more. So, for example, in digital inclusion, which was the subject that was raised earlier under the previous discussion, and cost of living interventions, which can be scaled. So we've tried to think about how we can make that as easy as possible.
Thank you, Eve. Okay, Councillor Flynn, do you have a question?
Tony, very linked to what you've just raised there, actually, although it's not actually annuality, that there is a danger if the money isn't spent in whatever year it's allocated for, we're going to lose it. The local investment plan, are we anywhere near, is that anywhere near being agreed? Because I understand it also has to go to government for agreement. I want to come back on that one as well. Thanks.
Yeah, so it was submitted to government before summer, July, I think it was submitted. So we're waiting for the response now, Councillor Flynn. That's what we were expecting at the end of last month, but we haven't heard yet. So that it's quite kind of pressing, really, to be able to get that outcome so we can get on with the projects. Yeah.
I know it's a high level submission, but basically I think you mentioned before what you're planning to do in the current year regarding cost of living crisis and all the rest of it. Do we have any more details of what is actually planned, assuming it's all agreed, of course?
Yeah, so probably just to give you a couple of examples, it's obviously a bit tricky, because until we know we've got the money and exact amounts, we can't guarantee that all these projects are going to head. But I mean, I guess giving you a bit of a feel under the headers in the report, which we, where we're prioritising, we're looking at working with communities around some of the areas around signposting and financial support, around digital inclusion, energy efficiency, development of local food strategies, and so on. So all of the work that communities have already got kind of mobilised or kind of got an idea of exactly what needs to be done. Under community infrastructure, we're looking at programmes to support pride of place and developing social fabric, including some small capital investment. And again, we're working with communities at the moment to just look at how that would work in terms of the grant giving. And I must emphasise that we expect a lot of this money actually to go to third sector organisations and cultural organisations, locally and community-based organisations, through some of the channels that we already have established as a council. Because one of the other areas is kind of being able to use some of the UK SPF to bolster some of those grants that go through Arts at Leeds and Leeds Inspired, again, helping us to be able to reach more areas across the city, but with a particular focus on intercultural projects that support communities to be able to be more resilient and celebrate their community identity. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a feel. I suppose the final one to mention as well is We are also looking to support innovation businesses and productivity. So we're looking to build on a programme that we ran using some of the COVID-19 additional restrictions grant money called Innovation at Leeds to make sure that we can also bolster the ongoing development of our innovation ecosystem in the city.
Thanks, Ian.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you for that. When I saw this report, I did think, well, it's a very poor Brexit dividend that we've got, really, isn't it? And not what we were promised on the side of the bus and whatnot. So very disappointing. I also have great empathy with you as officers, your team, Eve. When Whitehall come up with these schemes, they don't really think, do they, and really help you in terms of delivering the scheme. The time scale, the pressure to get bids in, and then the rules around it. I'm not sure this is what we wanted from devolution, is it whatsoever? So you've got my empathy, and thanks to your team, yourself and your team, for getting something ready to go. Now the question I've got is around the strengthening our social fabric, this objective, community infrastructure and local green space, something I'm really passionate about, levelling up in the city where our local green spaces aren't up to scratch, but that's going to need more capital. And you said it's just a small capital pot, really, which disappoints me, because it is, it's one of the clear objectives. It's an investment priority. So what is the split in terms of capital revenue? And could that be addressed?
So unfortunately, I haven't got the detail in front of me about the split of capital and revenue, but I'll send that subsequently for information to clarify. I think the UK's PF, I suppose, is I guess we should look at it in a round against the levelling up kind of bid as well, in terms of seeing that the levelling up monies that have been applied for separately provide large capital grants to be able to do in principle, to be able to do transformational change. But there is, of course, a consistent approach about having to prepare bids and submit in. So there is an obvious requirement then upon officers to prepare those bids and put them in. But that's what all local authorities are having to do. So I think the capital that is in the UK's PF pot, I think primarily, realistically, it will support just small scale interventions of capital. And as I said, we're just trying to work out the detail at the moment with communities about the best way to set that process up. So I can't really comment any further on exactly how it'll work at the moment, Councillor, but we will kind of have a transparent process for how we go about doing that.
Yeah, I totally understand about the levelling up bid for capital, and we are really that carrot's been dangled for a while now, and we're certainly relying on it for our West Leeds green spaces project, and desperate to have it and be grateful for it as well. But if that fails, and the last set of levelling up funds, how they were distributed, doesn't give me great hope that we will get it. So that does leave potential deficit in the improving that investment priority around community infrastructure and local green space. But I think that's a comment rather than a question for you, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Chair, and everyone.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ritchie. Okay, Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Chair. I just would like to clarify one situation which is detailed in the report for particularly on Councillor Ritchie's point, which is to say that this is a really poor result of Brexit. Actually, this programme is to continue, and this whole Shared Prosperity Fund is until the end of 2023 as a financial year, which is also the end of the ESIP funding. So as a result, this is actually complementing the funding. And as a result, I don't believe there's been a major decline at all in terms of the amount of funding that's available to to Leeds or to West Yorkshire, because this is actually complementing the scheme until it ends. And then there is actually mentioned in the report a general assumption that then potentially the future shared prosperity fund will take that over in due course, but we will have to wait until we get further detail. But I think that was unfortunately something that was missed in the report. I think that when it comes to looking more into the detail, I just wanted to ask particularly, Councillor Flynn really took my point about asking what other schemes were available. And I think that as a result, I think one thing that came back in terms of feedback from the original levelling up bids that we were able to make at the beginning, that some of the schemes were shovel-ready schemes that we had as a council, but then were rejected from. And as a result, I just wanted to ask, given you mentioned of the rural prosperity fund, do we have any particular schemes in mind that we're able to take forward, and will that include engagement with those particular ward members that actually represent areas that are particularly rural and have got deprived areas, despite the fact that they may look affluent on paper? Thank you very much, Chair.
So to answer the point, I think was a question to me, which is around the Rural Prosperity Fund. The mayoral combined authority WICA are dealing with that, not as at Leeds Council at the moment. So the discussion is taking place with leaders to take some direction at this stage. And because of the scale of the money, I believe that it's likely that that will be overseen at the West Yorkshire level rather than locally. But we're just awaiting, we need to sort of determine and understand how that will work before I could comment further. I think I would expect that elected members will be engaged in the usual ways through the combined authority in relation to that, through their processes.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Ritchie. Yes, you can. Councillor Ritchie, yes.
Thank you for allowing me to do that, and colleagues for the patience. Eve, you missed a fundamental point. I thought you would answer it, because it's a matter of fact, either it's more money or it's less money. And I've read the report, and on bullet point 34, it's quite clear that it says that this fund is a reduction in funding compared to previous funding. So I guess we're asking for a fact check. And I think I did watch, or certainly read the notes from exec board, and that seemed to be the narrative there as well. So it's a matter of fact, either it is or either it isn't. So either I'm right, Councillor Firth's right, and the report's right, or wrong.
So the report is correct, but Councillor Firth is also correct that European funding does continue into next year. So if, in terms of kind of a total amount of funding that is going through till next year, there is still funding in place for employment and skills provision, for programs like digital enterprise and adventure in the next year running through. There is, and the comment he made was also correct, that there is a bit of a working assumption that there may be an increase to UK Shared Prosperity Fund money in the future when some of that goes down, although that was an assumption that was made before the economic climate kind of worsened. And so it may not be a fair assumption to make now, but yeah, you've both made correct points. Sorry, I'm not trying to be diplomatic. The report, it remains correct. There is a reduction in funding. Councillor's first comment is correct that European funding continues for a period of time, which means that actually there is still funding around unemployment and skills in this year, even though it's not coming through UK SPF.
Thank you, Eve, and thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Okay, Councillor Carlisle.
Councillor Ritchie had my questions really on that. It was around the values and trying to get to the bottom of it. I mean, I'll make a comment then, if that's all right, Chair, because I mean, the referendum, we're not going to debate that today and debate which side we're on. But the one thing I was clear about before is that Yorkshire and the Humber were a net beneficiary of money from the EU. And that was the one thing I was worried about, regardless of what the answer was of the referendum, that this money is coming to our communities because we deserve it, because we are areas there where there is a need and where there is less funding than otherwise. And I just wanted to make sure that was there. So can we just make a note, obviously, that you have pointed that part out even the report that is an assumption that's been made, and there is a risk to some of these services around skills, which I think are services that we need. So can we just make sure that that's something that this board can follow up as and when anything comes clear, so we can see exactly what's happening there?
Thank you. I'll take that as a comment as well. Thanks, Councillor Carlisle. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions really. Eve, one about match funding. Sorry, will there still be a requirement for beneficiaries to get match funding, which will become increasingly difficult? And I'm trying not to stray into the discussion we've just had, because obviously the new structural funds are far less in real terms than, even though there's an overlap. And the annual award is less, far less. And it's how we look at it, isn't it? So Leeds City Council have 120 staff in employment and skills directly employed through the ESF, and some business support staff through ERDF. So, and that's 2.4 million, isn't it, and 1.2 million pounds respectively. And I read a report that was published earlier this year that says, because of this new fund, there's a direct risk to the inclusive growth strategy. So 2 questions. 1, match funding. 2, contingency plan for those staff, not just because of their individual jobs, but the roles they do around employment skills and development. And 3, what's the plan is the one for the cliff edge for all the other projects in this city. Lots of them around employment skills. We have unemployed support and things that are really important to people in city, which will in effect disappear.
Okay, thanks for the question. So on match funding, one of the upsides of UK SPF is it doesn't have the same restrictions around match funding as European money. So that's kind of actually helpful. There may be times when either in our design of schemes or in the combined authorities design of schemes that we seek match funding to sort of leverage funding from the private sector or other sources or sponsorship in the way that we kind of use the money, but there's not the same restrictions, so that's a helpful thing. Then in relation to staff, I must stress that the staff that work for me, both in employment and skills and in business support, are not at risk of suddenly losing their jobs when the European funding drops off at this point in time for two good reasons. First of all, in relation to business support, we are in the process of working with the combined authority to take business cases through for future funding for both Adventure and Digital Enterprise, which are the 2 programmes that we run through Leeds City Council for the combined authority. Those programmes being likely to be funded through a combination of Gainshare and UK Share Prosperity Fund. Gainshare, for anyone that's listening that doesn't know what that is, that's the devolution money. So we are confident those programmes will continue, although their scope it will likely to be reduced. So those two programmes are going through that process with the combined authority. Similarly, with employment and skills, we've actually just been through a process with a combined authority, working with all of the other local authorities to secure some ongoing investment, again, through Gainshare into employment and skills. So whilst, it may be, I absolutely think it's right to be flagging the issues around those staff. We're confident as leaders, both myself and my 2 heads of service who are very experienced, Martin Long and Phil Cole, that the funding will be in place to continue with those programmes. Where we've had staff that have gone over their 2 years with us on a fixed term contract, we've switched them across to permanent contracts with the council because their employment rights are exactly the same. That gives them a level of security, and it means that it's a greater chance of us retaining those staff as European funded programmes are coming towards an end, and we're still going through those negotiations with the combined authority. So we're doing all that we can to make sure that staff feel reassured that they understand the processes we're going through, and that we keep hold of them to do the important work that they do right across the city, both for individuals and for businesses.
Thank you. Councillor Burke, do you have a follow-up? Are you okay?
Thank you, Eve. And just around and it's mainly employment and skills based, isn't it? Right across the city to the providers, because it's been going 50 years. So people are really reliant and dependent on those funds now, and they are largely going to disappear. So I just wondered if the local authority had a plan to support that activity.
So one of the things that's difficult for us to account for as a local authority, and this is sort of back to the question about can you put your finger on how much money was coming into Leeds from European funding, is that some money was coming into Leeds through bids that were not made by us for European funding. So getting your sort of finger on the button of exactly how much there was is difficult. There may be certain projects that will come to an end of European funding, and they may or may not be able to find another funding source, either through the way in which the combined authority or ourselves are distributing funds from gain share or the UKSPF, or through central government approaches to restricting. So it's difficult to kind of really say, Chair, just at the moment, but it's not really the council's responsibility to take on the employment risks of external organisations.
Yeah, thank you. And for example, CLLD, Community-Led Local Development Programme, was a EU-funded thing, and one of its challenges actually was needing match funding, which is, I'm glad those restrictions aren't on the SPF. But I'll let Councillor Burt follow up on that.
Sorry, just to clarify, I didn't mean to their staff's employment. I meant the activity which our residents benefit from.
Yeah, I think that's just a reality, isn't it? If the funding stops, that isn't necessarily something we'll be able to afford to do as a council. Unless you want to comment any further. No. Okay, no, thank you very much for that. So I guess the takeaway there is from everyone in this room, I think we're hoping that the funding gets approved as soon as possible so we can do work in our city. So thank you for coming and sharing that. So I'm going to just end that item. I'm going to have a 10-minute break for everyone. So we'll start again at 12:15, and we've got finance items. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, everyone. Welcome back. I'm sure the many people watching online are pleased to see my face back on the screen. Okay, so we've got one more substantive item and a work plan to talk about now. So let's move straight into that. Just like to note that during the meeting we had apologies from Councillor Cooper. I'm not sure of the reason for that. So but I wanted to share that apologies. The new people who have arrived for Richard and Neil for this item. Do you want to introduce yourself, and if you want to make any opening comments, please, as always, assume we've read the report and in your introduction. Thank you.
Neil Evans, Director of Resources.
Hi, I'm Richard Ellis. I'm the Deputy Chief Officer of Financial Services. There's two reports to consider today. The first one's a financial health report for period 5, and the second one's a medium-term financial strategy. The financial health report to the end of August, which went to October's Executive Board, shows a projected variation of £20.4 million, which is an increase of circa about £8 million from the position that was reported in September, although additional savings have been identified around 17 of which reduces the projected overspend down to about 17.98 million. Contained within that position is the additional cost of the now agreed pay award, whereby each employee will be receiving £1,925 per annum. The cost of that gross is about 19.4 million. In addition, that position also includes the additional costs associated with energy. That's 4.3 million after the utilisation of a £3.9 million provision. It also reflects increased cost of fuel and known cost of living impact in terms of demand for our services, and also any implications it had for reductions in income. It also details where we are in terms of the collection of business rates, and also notices or reports on a reduction in terms of council tax collection rates. In addition, it also reports on the housing revenue account position that's showing currently a projected variation of £0.2 million. I can go on to the medium-term financial strategy, or whether it'd be more appropriate to take questions this time, Chair.
I'd like to take them together if that's all right,
Okay.
Richard.
Okay. So moving on to the medium-term financial strategy, covering the period 23-24 up to 27-28. In overall terms, that takes account of known, we're flatlining assumptions with regard to the business rates baseline, also with regard to the level of revenue support grant we're going to receive. In terms of council tax increases, that the current position assumes a 1.99% core increase, a 1% increase in terms of the adult social care precept. This report was put together during the autumn or in the summer of this year, but clearly we're awaiting the autumn statement from the Chancellor on November the 17th, which has a potential to change some of these figures that are contained within the medium-term financial strategy. The report goes on to look at pressures within the medium-term financial strategy, takes account of pay and price pressures, and concludes that over the 5-year period, there is a gap of £216.4 million, of which 86.7 million relates to 23-24. After taking account of identified savings, many of which are full-year effects, the gap for 23-24 reduces down to 63.6 million. Work is ongoing currently with regard to reducing that gap. Savings reports were received at October's Executive Board, and a further savings report is received at December's Executive Board, in addition to the provisional budget for 23-24, which will update the position outlined for 23-24 that's contained in the medium-term financial strategy, and also will reflect the Chancellor's autumn statement on November the 17th. And clearly, if there's a provisional local government finance settlement, it will reflect that position as well. In In terms of the housing revenue account, that reflects a position of a £38.7 million gap over the period, of which 12.2 million relates to 23-24. Thank you, Chair. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Just for context, in my time, so I was first elected in 2018, and each year we've managed to, in year, meet our budget. And so this seems very unusual. If you could just put that in context in terms of the history of Leeds' strong record on managing our in-year budget.
You're right, Chair. Over the period, certainly the last few years, certainly since I've been in this role, we've always delivered a balanced budget position. Clearly, if the authority overspends, it would have to use reserves in the current year. And that then has a knock-on effect to the forward year in terms of having to find additional savings that equate to the sort of any overspend from the previous years. And also, I would also just add to that statement in terms of the strong financial management arrangements we have, that is recognised as well by Grant Thornton, our external auditors, in terms of their audit reports do comment in terms of despite the sort of financially challenging times that we live in, is that the authority's track record on delivering a balanced budget position in year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Flynn.
Thanks, Andrew. It's probably more of a comment, I think, rather than a question, because it's to do with service reviews and business as usual sort of savings. Each month we get these reports, and each month it looks like one or two or even more of the directorates are not going to achieve, or certainly there's a pressure to achieve the savings already set for this current year, even though I think there's an expectation we still will have a balanced budget. We've got a working group, I think sometime in the next few weeks, to look specifically at BAU and service review savings. I'm just wondering whether you know whether or not the other directorates will be in a position to actually put forward their budget action plans at that particular point in time for the next, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, we're still planning on coming to December's executive board with a balanced budget based on the assumptions which Richard has set out. So that will involve all departments going forward with those proposals, those going out to public consultation. Obviously, Scrutiny Board is a key part of that. I think the one sort of proviso I would make is that much hinges on what is said in the statement in the middle of November. And if that statement were to vary enormously from our assumptions, then we may be in a more of a tricky position and may have to take a number of further weeks to kind of come up with any further gap that creates. But so we're working on the assumptions which, as I say, are laid out in the paper today, and you should have those.
Just say, don't hold your breath on the statement, Neil. I mean, again, it's not really for yourselves. It's just sort of a marker, and it's not a criticism of any of the directorates, given the financial state of the country at the moment. But one or two of them, particularly the ones delivering services to children and to adults, social care in particular. Children and families are struggling at the moment, and it doesn't appear to be getting any better. Whereas adult social care appears to be sort of maintaining the grip they have on it at present. It'll just be very interesting, I think, to see what the budget action plans actually are for children and family, given the sensitivity of the areas that they're actually dealing with. So no real response from that, I think, Andrew.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for other members? Okay, I'll bring in Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for those introductory remarks. I just want to ask, in terms of the minimum revenue provision that was increased in recent years, understandably to cover and support frontline services, but over the next 5-6 years up until the end of 27-28 as a financial year, that will increase from roughly about 65 million to going up to then to 71. Is there any sort of provision within the current plan for when that may start to reduce going forward?
So, Councillor, that covers the period covered by the medium-term financial strategy. I mean, are you looking beyond that period in order to make the plan is to make sure that the level of MRP doesn't increase over and above those levels, and that's about basically is that any new borrowing undertaken is as a minimum is equivalent to the MRP that we're repaying. So we are focused in terms of not trying to increase that level of MRP. Plus, the other thing to know, as is contained in the report, is there's currently a capital programme review being undertaken, and clearly the outcome of that will be reflected in terms of any implications for the council's future borrowing in respect to that. And again, when that report is incorporated into the final budget report that comes to February's executive board and full council, then clearly we'll see what the implications of that review are in terms of the level of MRP that the council has. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. It's a bit of a depressing document, and you know, it shows the challenging times that we're in, and it's not exclusive to Leeds, and I hope that government steps in to support local authorities because of all the vital services that we provide. I've just got one question, and it's around the demand, the rise in the pressure on Children and Families Directorate that Councillor Flynn's also highlighted. And I know we do lots of preventative work. Councillor Venners and Councillor Pryor before in that role has quite rightly highlighted that and the difference that has made. But I just wonder if it's time to look at an investor save around some of these, I suppose, the adolescents that have got perhaps behavioural issues that are putting them at risk of foster or placements or what have you. And I'm by that I'm saying perhaps an external organisation. I'm not going to name names on here, but perhaps who've worked with young offenders specifically, just to try and prevent. We've got a great record preventing homelessness. You know, you've got stats for that. I'm not sure if we can put a number on the prevention of moving into placements than staying in the home. I suspect it's pretty good anyway, but just these really high cost and out of area placements that we could perhaps maybe get a grip on if we had an investor save with an organisation that can work one-to-one with these young people, and hopefully divert them away from the path that they're heading down, some of them, and back to, you know, supportive family life. So it would be an investor save. I realise, you know, it would be an extra cost initially, but hopefully something we can look at to justify and get some good outcomes for these young people and our communities as well, as a result, as a knock-on benefit.
Yeah, so there are a number of pressures which are national pressures in terms of the costs of external placements, costs of things like foster care, which are also being recognised in the recent executive board report, which are somewhat inevitably pushing prices up, and you're seeing that, let's say, right across the country. But that's not to say that we're going to sort of be passive about this. Actually, you know, the council is going to be focused very strongly on what we can do around trying to manage children's services costs as much as possible. And given you see the scale of the pressure within the overall amount, that is where the real concentration is taking place at the moment. So there is a lot of corporate effort with Children's Services to look at preventative work, which you've referred to, looking at things like bringing in more residential care back into the city rather than using external, more highly skilled foster carers which can avoid again external placement, and issues around commissioning and procurement where we can maybe learn from some of the strengths that adult social carers demonstrated over this last number of years. So there is a lot of work going on to try and sort of pull that back and put in our budget projections for next year. Having said that, again, within a context that this is happening nationally and probably won't be able to be avoided in its entirety.
Okay, thank you very much. I think probably the details of that suggestion is probably another scrutiny board, but I think it's fair comment. Okay, I can't see anyone else indicating to speak. So thank you very much for coming today. Appreciate your time. I also appreciate pass on our thanks to the team. I know they're working hard with this budget. It's very challenging and lots of work to do. So thank you very much. Okay, so members, we'll move on to the work programme. I think it's on page 193 of your packs. I'll just say that because it's a long way, a lot of papers in this item. Hopefully it's self-explanatory. Do any members want to make comments? I'll start with Councillor Firth.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for chairing today. It's been a really interesting discussion overall. Can I just ask about the devolution item for the next board meeting? Just wondered, do we have any information on who may be attending? Just really because, carry on, Chair.
We invited the mayor. My understanding is that she's now said she won't be able to attend. We're trying to find an appropriate person. I clearly would have liked the mayor to attend. As chair of corporate governance and audit committee at the time when this happened, the board, which I supported, recommended that she came to full council every year to answer questions from members, and I'd still be an advocate for that in terms of the structural position. So just sorry for cutting in, but I share your we clearly need someone from her team to come and answer questions. Otherwise it's sort of a mute point, isn't it? But so I'll let you carry on.
No, to be honest, Chair, I appreciate you coming in because you totally answered the question. I think it's understandable because we all want to have the proper scrutiny to understand that we're getting the full benefit of devolution. And I know that's been mentioned by all members in terms of making sure that we do get that, and especially given that we've taken back control to West Yorkshire, never mind anything else. So I just wondered, certainly if we can get that clarified, that would be appreciated.
Any other comments on the work programme? Okay, super. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you in